Top 10 Dr. Phil Success Stories Part 2. Dr. Phil is the most famous doctor in our lifetime. His show has existed since 2002, and since its debut, Dr. Phil has become a tabloid success. But that fame has come hard-earned as he deals with erratic, ridiculous, and sometimes even dangerous people. But with every story comes the chance to help someone. Here are the top 10 times Dr. Phil has managed to do just that. Make sure you give us a thumbs up and subscribe to this channel. Let's get it going. 10. Sexy Vegan. As one of the most famous guests on the show, the sexy vegan stuck out amongst the multitude of guests because of his major disrespect towards authority figures, love of wearing jocks, and bright green facial tattoos. He also is an artist with several records out, and also wants to be the next president of the United States of America. This is one guy who attracts attention everywhere he goes, which is ironically what brought about change. After seeing himself on Dr. Phil, our vibrant vegan cleaned up his act. By the time he reappeared to apologize to the doc, he had gone through 3 months without any arrest, neighbor complaints, or evictions. He still wears Speedos, but his attitude has changed so drastically, he has even included Dr. Phil in a song featured on his first album. Talk about a change of heart. Unlike the sexy vegan, some people do realize they need help before coming onto the show. The next success story started with one woman's realization that she wanted a chance at a better life before her disease killed her. 9. Eating disorder death threat. If you have never had or had exposure to an eating disorder, count yourself as fortunate. An eating disorder is a ravaging disease that causes those afflicted to literally waste away. The woman who was brave enough to ask for help herself was only able to do so after she weighed 70 pounds and was under the threat of her liver and kidneys failing. But with Dr. Phil's help, she was able to get into treatment and has taken her life back after an astonishing 12-year struggle. Eating disorders are horrible and can destroy a family. The next success story gives a glimpse of hope to all drug addicts globally. 8. Sisters addicted to heroin. Heroin is a hardcore drug most drug users avoid due to its extremely addictive nature. Unfortunately, that doesn't stop it from being easy to obtain. The 3 sisters in this story all found out the hard way just how addictive the substance is. All 3 of them were hooked and stuck surviving on the substance in their parents' house. They were so addicted that they showed up high to Dr. Phil's show after having smuggled heroin in their suitcases from New Jersey. But after a hard and emotional talk, Dr. Phil managed to convince the parents to stop enabling and kick the 3 girls out. At the same time, they were all split up to different rehab centers to work on their sobriety. 2 years later, that hardship paid off, as all 3 were clean and sober upon their next appearance on the Dr. Phil show. Unfortunately, heroin addiction is a crisis in this country, striking a variety of different people from all walks of life. The next success story is a real example of the strength of motherhood and its ability to motivate. 7. Pregnant and using. Dr. Phil has helped dozens if not hundreds of drug addicts throughout his career. For most addicts, nothing matters to them more than their next high. This guest was so into drug consumption that she started prostituting herself just to get a fix. Her family had tried an intervention, multiple rehabs, but nothing had worked. During this time, she got pregnant from one of her many clients. However, despite this, she continued using up until her family dragged her to Dr. Phil's show. She agreed to go to rehab again, but this time for the baby. She appeared on the show 13 months sober and working very hard to get custody of her child back. It is a fantastic example of a struggle a mother will go through for their children. Some parents will put themselves through hell for their kids, but the next success story involves parents with the exact opposite reaction. We see how serious abuse is and how far Dr. Phil will go to ensure the welfare of a child. 6. Daughter removed. The first thing we hear of this girl's welfare is testimony from her divorced father stating her mother took her to buy sexual items. She is clearly not the mother of the year, but your opinion of both parents plummets from there. The teenage daughter had been allowed to drop out of school, was having sex under the knowing parents' noses, and was even allowed to smoke marijuana. Worse yet, the father admitted to knowing all this was happening, but had done nothing to ensure the child's safety. Thankfully, Dr. Phil managed to talk some sense into the two, get the daughter sent to a program he personally vouched for, and also got the 2 parents signed up for parenting courses. Seeing as the alternative was for CPS to take their daughter, I'm not surprised they settled on this option. However, it ended happily, so we're counting this as a win for Dr. Phil. Clueless parents are not uncommon to see. The next success story has parents more clueless than most, as Dr. Phil addresses how to handle a very sensitive topic, self-harm. 5. Self-harm blogging. Most people would never think of hurting themselves. Pain is a good deterrent except for a group of people who get addicted to the rush of endorphins that harm brings. There are a lot of different reasons this may happen, but self-harm is a severe affliction that can be very hard to address correctly. This particular guest had been self-harming since 8 years of age, and then had created a blog to help her handle the pressure of her condition. Unfortunately, as Dr. Phil was quick to point out, using the internet like that allowed her to justify and continue her habit. In a very emotional discussion, he encouraged her to use the help they provided. A specialist in complex cases like hers could help to find the reason she felt the need to harm herself in the first place, instead of covering up the trauma. They managed to get her help, and she even agreed to find a professional who would help to channel positivity into her blog. Dr. Phil shows us the different ways trauma can affect us. For some people, it manifests as self-harm, but others develop PTSD. And the next success story shows us just how hard surviving like that can be. 4. PTSD and suffocating parents. Struggling with a disorder like PTSD is extremely difficult. The guest on the show was struggling to come out from under her PTSD, and her parents weren't exactly doing much to help. Dr. Phil was extremely understanding, talked to her backstage, and he even set her up with the leading researcher on PTSD to help her overcome the terrible event. They agreed on her treatment plan, and Dr. Phil spoke with her parents, but the most significant impact would be the context Dr. Phil had given this girl to help with her debilitating disease. PTSD happens when something terrible happens to a person, but some people are able to see a bad situation coming and seek help to avoid it. The next success story is about spousal abuse and just how dangerous it can get. 3. Unrealistic Expectations. It's surprisingly easy to fall into a bad relationship. Sometimes the mistreatment doesn't seem that bad. This guest's husband was a diagnosed narcissist by Dr. Phil and had very unrealistic expectations for his wife. He told her that she would have to be dolled up and in shape or else he would leave her for the other women drooling over him. His constant criticisms had lowered her self-esteem and left her feeling worthless. Dr. Phil was quick to point out what the husband was expecting was a prostitute, cook, and babysitter, not a wife. It took a lot of talking, but what really seemed to turn the husband's opinion around was a mandated date focused on just the wife and a makeover all about her. She was glowing and so much happier after a day of positivity. In the end, he saw the change in the woman he loved and saw the error of his ways, thanks to Dr. Phil. This instance was a fairly low-key example of a spousal dispute, but abuse happens quickly and viciously. The next success story includes a heartbreaking story that helped the guest realize the slippery slope they were standing on. 2. Survivor's testimony. Dr. Phil's show clearly helps fighting couples. It seems every other episode is centered around a couple's problems, but the guests in this particular episode were headed down such a dark path. But Dr. Phil brought out some heavy artillery. A special guest appearance of a domestic abuse survivor had the audience silent as she recounted her husband waking her up by pouring scalding oil over her body. She talks about just how quickly violence escalates in those situations, her difficult recovery, and how she covered mirrors for 6 months after she was so ashamed of her scars. Her first public appearance since the assault brought the guests to tears, and moved the wife enough to admit that she needed to get out before it was too late. Dr. Phil had managed to help not 1, not 2, but 3 guests in one episode of his show, a record even for him. The number 1 spot on our countdown is still about spousal abuse. It's also one of Dr. Phil's shocking success stories. I saved the best for last, but first I have a quick challenge that takes only 5 seconds to complete. So if you can leave a like and subscribe within the next 5 seconds, you'll get 10 years of amazing luck. Just try it. It really works. 1. The dangers of abuse. Most fighting couples never consider the fact that their kids could be taken away by Child Protective Services. These guests found out firsthand that the wife's violent temper and husband's defensive tactics could impact their whole family. This happened when Dr. Phil told them they were abusing the kids by forcing this turmoil around them and risking losing their custody. But the threats, stalking, and obsessive behavior had Dr. Phil telling the husband he was scared for him. In a very calm, straightforward tone, he told the man one of 2 things would happen. He would get hurt or he would go to jail. His wife also admitted she attacked him in violent, sometimes drunken fits, so It was not too surprising to hear Dr. Phil speak so earnestly with the man. The reason this takes our #1 success story is due to the extreme offenses, but especially because Dr. Phil did what most wouldn't be able to do. He recognized a victim regardless of gender and wanted nothing but the best for that victim's welfare. Because of this, a situation that had been overlooked previously due to the husband's gender was stopped. He was given validation in the abuse he received. In the end, the husband was set on handling the relationship with his wife differently, and was now open-eyed about the impact on his children. Of all the Dr. Phil success stories, I was struck by this one, and truly consider this to be his greatest success story. That's it for today. We hope wherever you are, one of these stories inspired you. Thanks for watching, and have an excellent day.